Oh, hey, so I thought that we could all use with a short series of short videos on study hacks based on the top 4 problems that college students face when academically speaking. There's many more problems than that, but academically speaking, top 4 problems as a college student. And in my previous videos and my TikTok, I went over the top 4, which is being lost or forgetting. You can't remember the stuff. You sit down and take a test and your mind goes blank, or falling behind. That's a biggie. Or just existential dread, just anxiety and depression. And it's totally normal for you to be experiencing any of these and some. So this video is going to be about the second one, forgetting. When you forget everything, or you sit down to take your test and your mind goes blank and you can't remember any formulas and you can't remember the information. So when you forget stuff constantly when you're trying to study for a class, you think you know the material, but on the test day, your mind goes blank and you can't recall any of the material, or you can't recall the formulas you need to use, or you can't figure out which formula to use for what problem. You have read to the end of the page and you have no idea what you just read. You can't remember anything that you just read. And you think I got this, and you go in to take the test, and maybe your mind doesn't go blank, but the questions are like, what? When did we study this? You have no idea. It's either the questions are either way too hard for the material you were studying, or it doesn't even seem like you're being tested on the material you studied. This is a common problem. There's nothing wrong with you. This is a normal thing that as a college student, this is an obstacle that once you learn how to overcome this, you're going to be that much better for it. And you can carry these skills through the rest of your life. So forgetting, the very first thing that you can do to fix this problem is repetition, repetition, repetition. And if I didn't say it, repetition. You want to review the material more than once. You cannot read something through once, even if you understand it, and then expect to retain all that information. You cannot go into a lecture and listen to the teacher and expect to retain all that information that you just got from the lecture. Even if you did understand it and you weren't confused, you knew exactly what the teacher was talking about. How many times have you gone to a lecture, you understood it, you understood what the teacher was talking about, you can follow along on the board, whatever he or she was writing, but then you get home and maybe that evening or the next day, you sit down to do homework and you have no idea what you had listened to in lecture the other day. That is totally normal, because the thing is that when you go into and listen to a lecture or you study something, you are never going to walk away with retaining 100% of that information. There have been numerous studies about this, and the further along in time that you go after the lecture or after you study, the more and more information you lose from your memory recall ability. So the key is to review the material more than once. Once you get out of lecture, like even right after class or later on that day, like while you're having lunch or while you're waiting for another class to start, just quickly review that information, review the notes that you have, review the lecture material, or if you record the lecture, if you listen to my first video on what to do if you're lost in class, I always say record, don't take notes in lecture class, because then you miss the next thing the teacher's saying. Instead, record the lecture, and when you get home, then sit down and listen to the lecture, and then you can take notes, because you can pause, rewind, fast forward, play it slower, play it faster, whatever you need to do to actually take the notes. That way, if you just show up to lecture class and you're listening to the teacher and you go to take notes, as soon as you start writing down a note, you're missing the next thing the teacher says, and now you're lost. And so you want to just record the lecture. You want to pay attention to what the teacher's saying the whole time, record the lecture, then go home, and later on that night, go through the lecture again. You can jack up the speed of your recording so you don't have to sit there for 50 minutes or an hour and a half or however long the lecture actually was, but you can go through and take notes off of that. And then you can, as I said, you can pause, rewind, repeat in case you missed something. And then that way you're going to have much more accurate notes. And that's going to solidify the information in your head. You heard it in the lecture the first time. Now you're listening to the recording of the lecture again. And the more repetition you go through the material, the more and more it's going to be drilled into your brain, and it's going to increase your ability to recall that information when the time comes to take the test or doing your homework. The studies have shown that when you go into a lecture, within 24 hours, first of all, you walk out of that lecture with only like 60% of the material that the teacher just lectured about. You only walk away with about 60% of that material. That's all your brain is being able to process, especially if it's new information. Now, if you're used to it and you've taken a similar class before, it might be higher. You might be able to remember more because it's not new information. But especially when it's new information, you're only going to walk away from that lecture as soon as you hit those classroom doors, and walk out into the hall. You've lost 40% of that information that you just heard. Now you're at 60%. And then once 24 hours pass without you going over that material again to reinforce it, you're going to lose like another 20%. And when 48 hours pass, you're going to lose another 40%. So if you don't constantly go over the same information again and again, it's going to fall out of your brain. Well, it stays in your brain, but it goes back into your long-term memory, and your ability to recall it is not going to be there. So what you can do also, besides after class, just quickly going over the material again, just to reinforce that, is go over the material, just skim through it. Just take like 10 minutes in the morning and just zoom, just skim through it, just to remind yourself. And then also when you sit down to study, don't start at where you left off. Don't be like, okay, well, I finished here. I finished on page 59, so now I'm going to start on page 60. Go back to like page 50 and just skim through it again and review your previous material real quick before you start whatever is next, before you start something new. Also, when in your study habits, especially if you have a problem with memory recall or remembering the stuff, you want to study shorter periods of time, no marathon study sessions, okay? No marathon study sessions. No, sir. No, ma'am. Do not sit there and think that you're going to sit there for like 4 hours and study through everything and be able to apply that information or be able to remember all of that information, especially when it's all new information. Because what happens is after about 20, 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, if you have a good memory, your brain just kind of starts to shut off. Your brain's like, I'm sick of this, and it starts to shut off, and everything after that is going to be less effective. So we talked about in the previous video, we talked about the difference between a waste of time versus an investment of time. So if you are doing marathon study sessions all the time and wondering why you're not being able to remember this material, it's because you're wasting your time by studying past 40 minutes at a time. You're just, everything after that is just a waste of time. You need to do 20, 40 minutes, give yourself a break, go eat something, take a nap, watch a TV show, something to get your mind off of it. Let all that material that you just studied kind of stew in your brain and just give your brain some time to process that information just subconsciously while you're doing other stuff, and then come back and do another 20 or 40 minute study session. And that's going to be an investment of your time, not a waste of your time. If you can invest 20, 30 minutes at a time instead of 3 hours, just trying to knock it all out like on a Sunday and just studying all day on Sunday, just every day a little bit. And you can use, and I think this is coming up in one of the slides, you can use like an app like Quizlet where you make your own flashcards and just, in the morning while you're waiting for your Pop-Tart to toast, you can just sit there on your phone just really quick and go through and quiz yourself on some stuff. 5 minutes is all it needs. 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. It really adds up. It really does. Now, another reason why you might be forgetting stuff is application. You have to be able to know how to apply that information, like how it works out in real life. Like, what am I supposed to do with this information? How does this information apply in the real world? If I know this information and I go to a job, how am I going to use that information in real life, like in 3 dimensions in front of you, in the world outside of your head? And you have to get good at application. You can't just memorize a whole bunch of stuff or know how something works theoretically, but not able to actually make decisions and problem solve with it. Your teacher at college level, your teachers are going to expect you to not just understand the information you're given, but they're going to expect you to understand the information you're given well enough so that they give you a problem, you can use that information you just learned to problem solve and to come up with a solution. So it's taking it to the next level and make decisions and think for yourself and go, oh, well, if A means 1 and X means 2, then A plus X equals 3. You have to be able to take it to that next level and apply it and get some sort of a solution out of it. So the way to do that is first, practice problems. There are always practice problems at the end of the chapters in your texts. And usually, and this especially like in math, but this is usually for any textbook, usually those practice problems that are listed at the end of each chapter, the odd numbered ones, the answers are in the back of the book. So you don't even have to spend money buying like the separate student solution manual or study guide that is usually marketed to go along with the textbook. If you can't afford that, if the budget's tight, because college is expensive, you don't want to spend extra money on extra books if you don't need to. So those practice problems at the end of each chapter, work on those and do the ones that are easy first. Just go through the whole thing and sit down and kind of test yourself. The closer and closer you get up to test day, you want to be able to sit down and, without using your notes, unless you absolutely have to refer to them, sit down and work the problems and see if you can figure it out yourself. Go through, the way to do this is to go through all the problems just real quick, like set yourself on a timer and just go through and do all the easy ones that you know how to do. And then go back and do the kind of medium hard ones that you can kind of figure out if you concentrate and take your time on it and go through on that. And then you can go back and look at the hard ones that are intimidating that you didn't want to attempt yet and try to work through those problems. Also, when you're doing this, when you get to a difficult problem, when you're doing practice problems, don't ever spend more than 10 minutes trying to figure out, 10 or 15 minutes trying to figure out a problem. If you're stuck on that problem, 20 minutes, 30 minutes is not going to help things. If you can't get it figured out by like 10, 15 minutes, then you are stuck. Just admit it, you're stuck on that problem. So just put a little circle the number of the problem. Like if this is problem number 34, just put a little circle around that number and move on, and you can come back to it later. Because also, if you're stuck on 34 and you have like 100 problems that you can go through, just move on and do the other problems that you're not stuck on. Working those problems is going to give you more experience and more practice solving these problems. So by the time you're done, you may be able to go back to problem number 34, and now it seems easy because through practice, through doing the other problems, okay, I get it. You figured it out by now. You go back to that problem number 34, easy peasy. Oh, I don't know why that was so hard. Or If you still can't get it, if it's still stumping you, then take that problem, take all of your work. If you listen to my other videos, you know I am a huge anti-pencil. Do not use your pencil to do work. Students use pencils because they want to erase their mistakes. Don't ever erase your mistakes. You learn more from your mistakes than you do from your correct answers. So you want to keep those mistakes in your notes. You just draw like a little line through it or something so you know that that was wrong, or you know, you do a little X, but you should be able to read underneath your X, you know, the mistake that you made. And then that problem, bring in all of your work from that problem that's stumping you. Go see a tutor or go see your professor, show them the work that you were doing that you messed up on, and they can look at it and they can help you figure out where it was that you went wrong, that you went awry, and stopped using the correct methods, or you know, if you weren't using the correct method. The point is that they can see where you went wrong if you don't erase your mistakes. If you bring your mistake into them, show them, then they can see it, and they are much more able to help you much more quickly. Now, also, as I was saying before, you want to quiz yourself, and as soon as the closer and closer you get to test day, you want to start quizzing yourself without using your notes. And don't torture yourself, okay? Don't set yourself up for failure or feeling bad about yourself. You can keep your notes nearby. If you have to refer to them, then refer to them, but then make a note on that problem, you know, put like a little star and the letter N or something for notes, that you had to refer to your notes in order to do that one. And so that way you'll know those are the problems that you need to go back and repeat and redo until you can do them without using your notes for the test. That's how you can isolate your problem areas. And then when you study, you're narrowing the amount of things you're studying, because now you're just studying the stuff that you don't that you still need help on, that you still need to study. You're not just studying everything that you already know. You're not wasting your time. Remember, time, there's a waste of time, there's an investment of time. Those are two different things. So invest your time wisely and study the stuff that you're having problems with, not the stuff that you're not having problems with. That wouldn't make any sense. Now, Quizlet is what I was talking about before. This is an app. It's totally free. You can buy like a yearly subscription for a little bit of extra stuff on it, but even the annual membership is like $25. It's not expensive at all. It's not like these like Chegg or these homework websites that it's like $29 a month. This Quizlet is, you know, there's free version and it's like $25 a year. So it's very reasonable, but you can set up your own flashcards. You can look at other students' flashcards that are in the same class. But you set up I think I always want to set up my own flashcards, because just the simple act of me going over my notes and trying to put into my own words questions and answers, you know, for the flashcards out of my notes, and then typing all of those in, just that act alone is going to refresh your brain and drill the information into your brain. And you can count that as one of your study sessions where you're repeating the material over and over again, just even writing the flashcards themselves. Sometimes I make flashcards on Quizlet that I don't even use, but because it was just the act of making the flashcards, which was what drilled it into my brain for me, and now I can remember the information. Especially when you're starting out, you make your own flashcards on Quizlet. You can download the app on your phone. I have a Quizlet and I have a lot of like anatomy and physiology on my Quizlet, some chemistry, some stuff. My handle is srusan2. So you're always welcome to go on my Quizlet page and see if there's something that I have that is relevant to what you're studying. But you get those flashcards made, and then like in the morning when you're brushing your teeth, just have your phone and just scroll through the Quizlet thing, and it'll quiz you, and it'll give you the stuff that you keep getting wrong again and again until you can get everything right. So it kind of is automatically set up that way. Or, you know, every time you get on your phone to check Instagram, just make a commitment to yourself that before I get on Instagram, I'm just going to spend a couple minutes on Quizlet real quick and go over this material, and then I'll get on Instagram and play around. Or TikTok. Go through it. It doesn't take too long. Again, especially when you have a problem with remembering stuff, you don't want to do this for long chunks of time out of your day. You want to do it a few minutes in the morning, a few minutes after breakfast, a few minutes before class, a few minutes after class, just all throughout the day, just a couple minutes here and there. And that repetition, that constant revisiting to the material is going to be what's going to drill that into your head. Now, also, sometimes you just got to memorize stuff. There's some classes that there's no way around it. There's just some stuff that you got to memorize. So it's not about understanding the material. It's about memorizing a list of whatever. In anatomy and physiology, we had to memorize our list of cranial nerves. And there's no way around that other than just memorizing them. So you have to find some memorization tricks. Okay, the most common ones are the acronyms or mnemonics. That's when, you know, you take the first letter of each word and come up with a different word for it. But we had to memorize whether each, like the cranial nerves are numbered 1 to 12. And we had to memorize each cranial nerve, whether it was a sensory nerve or a motor nerve or both, right? So S, M, and B. And I'm not going to go into the whole mnemonic, but the very end of the mnemonic for the cranial nerves were: my brother says big brains matter most. So see, M, B, S, B, B, M, M. So this was nerve 12, this was nerve 11, this is nerve 10, nerve 9, nerve 8, nerve 7, nerve 6, and some stuff came before that. But you see what I'm saying? So cranial nerve number 6 is a motor nerve, because see that beginning letter of my is M, so that goes to motor. Cranial nerve number 7, that's my brother, so that means that cranial nerve is both sensory and motor. Cranial nerve number 8, this word is says, so that means sensory because it's an S, and you get the idea. So that's called mnemonics when you do that. And acronyms are really a similar thing. They're the same thing. The only thing different is that an acronym actually spells out a word, like scuba. Scuba is its own word, right? But it stands for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. And see how nicely that turns into the word scuba using the first letter of each of those words? So that's what an acronym is. And that's the difference between an acronym and a mnemonic. And they're both fantastic at helping you memorize stuff. You can use little personal stories that helps you remember stuff. And the funny thing is that when I had to memorize a lot of stuff for anatomy and medical terminology, we used to use, there's this like cartoon slideshow series, and they would have the bloodiest, goriest, craziest, most shocking pictures, these cartoon pictures, but it would relate back to that word that we're trying to memorize. And the more shocking, the more gory and bloody or funny that story is behind it, the more you're going to remember it, because it's like, whoa, that's crazy, and it's going to stick in your mind. So don't come up with a boring story. Come up with something crazy or gory or naughty or something. Alphabetization is another thing you can do sometimes if you need to memorize stuff. Like when I was a kid, I could never remember which is the Pacific Ocean and which is the Atlantic Ocean. I remember it because it's backwards. So say this is the US. Okay, so the ocean on the left side is going to be the Pacific Ocean, and the ocean on the right side is going to be the Atlantic. See, it's backwards alphabetizing. PA. So AP would be in alphabetical order, but it's backwards alphabetical order, the oceans, if you go from left to right on a map, or on either side of the United States. And that's just, it's silly, but that's just how I remember it, that it's backwards alphabetically. Also, you want to make sure you understand your vocabulary. In like chemistry and math and physics and anything that has to do with like mathematical formulas, there is a trick, and it is involving the units of measurement. So if I'm asked for the density of something, okay, the density, and I can't remember what the formula is for density, well, usually in the problem, it asks you, what is the density in grams over milliliters of water, or of whatever they're asking you the density for? Well, those units of measurement that density comes in, grams over milliliters, that's the formula. You take the grams, you take the weight, and you divide it by the volume, by the milliliters. That's the formula is the unit of measurement. And you can apply that in a lot of equations that you have to solve, whether it's chemistry, physics, math, because if they give you the units of measurement that they want you to, give the answer in, that's the formula. That's the mathematical formula. Grams divided by milliliters. That's the formula for density. Just look at the units of measurement. That usually gives you a clue on what the actual math formula is to get the answer. It's right there in front of you on the paper. Now, if you have watched my Studying Without Screaming video, I have a long video on a whole bunch of different study skills, and it's called Studying Without Screaming. I try to make these videos entertaining, so they're not boring you. So Studying Without Screaming, that's on my YouTube channel, and one of the things that I go over on that is to drink orange juice. Oh, here it is right here. Drink orange juice. Drink orange juice before you study, and then drink orange juice right before you go in to take the test. Okay, there's a reason. There are actually 3 reasons for this. One, orange juice is brain food. Orange juice has vitamins, minerals in it. It has vitamin C, magnesium, potassium, stuff that you need that your brain runs on, and it has glucose, because your brain only runs on glucose, on sugar. Like the rest of your body can run on like protein and stuff. But if you're on one of those like high protein, low sugar diets, people complain about having brain fog, that they can't remember stuff as well, and their brain's kind of not working. It's because they're starving their brain. Their brain needs sugar, and you don't want to just eat a bunch of candy. It's not good for you. But if you drink orange juice, that's kind of got like a time release sugar to it, so you don't have a sugar crash. And it's fruit sugar, so it's better for you. But it's also got those vitamins in it that it also really helps your brain to function, like calcium and magnesium and potassium. Okay, that's one reason why you drink orange juice before studying and right before taking the test. The second reason, and even more importantly, maybe, is that there's many studies. The one that I know of is from Johns Hopkins University back in like the mid-2010s, and they did a study, and if you replicate the same sensory input that you had when you were studying, and you replicate that same sensory input when you're taking the test, it improves your memory recall. So what I mean by that is, if you drink orange juice right every time before you study your chemistry class, okay, then you drink orange juice right before you go in to take the chemistry test. Your brain, you taste the orange juice, you can smell the orange juice, you have the sensation of drinking the orange juice, and your brain goes, oh, orange juice, I should be thinking about chemistry right now. You've kind of trained your brain to associate orange juice with chemistry. And so your brain just very much more easily recalls the information that you've been studying when you were drinking that orange juice at home. Sensory replication. So the three reasons why you drink orange juice: one, it's brain food. It's got the sugars and the vitamins and minerals in there. Two, it's sensory replication. You're replicating the same sensory input that you had when you were studying. You're replicating that to go in and take the test, and it makes your brain go, oh, we must be talking about chemistry or whatever the subject is. And the third reason, because I said there were three reasons, the third reason is the fact that orange juice is you won't get a sugar crash. No sugar crash. Because one time I made the mistake of telling one of my students this story, but I didn't say orange juice. I just said glucose, sugar. Your brain runs on sugar, and you need to replicate that same thing. So it was right around Halloween, and so she ate a whole bunch of Halloween candy before going in and taking the test in an attempt to feed her brain. Well, she gets in there, and the teacher lectures for 20 minutes before passing out the test. So by the time she started taking the test, she was in a sugar crash and started falling asleep and could not keep her eyes open and could not get her brain to work halfway through the test because she was on a sugar crash. Okay, so we don't want no Halloween candy. Orange juice is much more of a timed release sugar feeding your brain. It's not going to give you that sugar crash. So halfway in the middle of the test, you're not going to want to fall out. So in summary, repetition, repetition, repetition. And if I didn't say so before, repetition. You can never repeat things too much. And same thing with like YouTube videos. You can watch the YouTube video, the same YouTube video over and over again, or different YouTube videos on the same subject. Watch several of them. You're getting that repetition of that information you need. And study shorter, more often. And don't forget to use apps like Quizlet to set up some flashcards and quiz yourself every couple of minutes, when you're standing in line waiting at Starbucks for your coffee or something, and just pull it up real quick and just quiz yourself for a couple of minutes while you're waiting on something. If you just do that all throughout the day, every time you have like 2 minutes to wait, if you're watching a show and I can't afford to pay for no ads on my Disney Plus. So during the commercials, when the ads come on, I just flip through my Quizlet real quick and study some stuff. And then the commercial's over and the movie starts again. Then I go back to watching the movie. Easy peasy. Application. You want to do as many practice problems as you can. And first you do the easy ones, and then you try to work out the middle hard ones. Mid-hard. Circle the ones that stump you. Circle stumpers. And don't spend not over 10 minutes stuck on one problem. Just move on. And then do the rest of them, and then come back to it. And maybe take a nap, get something to eat, let your brain process for a little bit. And you'd be surprised if you do that and then come back to that problem. A lot of times the problem seems easy now because you've gotten some sleep, you're not stressed out anymore about it, or you've gotten some food in your system, or you've just given your brain time to process things. Your brain needs time to process. Quiz yourself without your notes if you can, as much as possible. And then the ones where you actually need to look at your notes, that's where you concentrate on and keep studying, because that's your problem areas. You want to get some tricks and mnemonics to try to memorize stuff that just has to be memorized. And don't forget, units of measurement will tell you what the formula is. And you want to use the same sensory input while you're studying and testing. So orange juice, grapefruit juice, maybe a different flavored juice for each class. I don't know. You use the same fuzzy study hoodie for a class. Like every time you study, if you really like that feeling of your fuzzy hoodie, then wear that every time you study, and then wear it when you go in to take the test.